Hi friends, I hope everybody is having a good day so far. I wanted to check in with you guys to go over our application problem for the first day. So I need you to get out your work so we can check it together. As I'm going over it, I want you to check your work and to see if it matches mine. If it doesn't, I want you to see how you can fix yours to match mine and we can kind of go over it all together. Okay, so your application for problem day 1 says, at recess, Diane skipped rope 165 times without stopping. Peter skipped rope 128 times without stopping. How many more times did Peter skip rope than, how many more times did Diane skip rope than Peter? Sorry. Okay, so let's think about the important information that we already know from this problem. Remember, we're going to read it and then we're going to circle or underline the important information that we know from the problem so that we can start to draw it and solve it. So we do know already that Diane skips rope 165 times without stopping. So I'm going to circle this number 165 so I know that that's how much Diane skipped. We also know that Peter skipped rope 128 times without stopping, so I'm going to circle that number. And my question is asking me, how many more times did Diane skip rope than Peter? Now remember, this sentence, this part of the sentence right here is so important. How many more times? So that's asking us to figure out how many more times she skipped rope than Peter did, because we know Diane skipped more than Peter. So I'm going to underline where it says how many more times. Now, I made a big version of this on my little whiteboard right here, so I'm going to show you guys that. So if I flip this up, I'm going to flip this around. Okay, so I chose to solve this problem 2 different ways. So if I look at my problem, let me move this over so I can see. Okay, so I know that Diane skipped rope 165 times. She skipped more times than Peter did. So her bar is going to be bigger on the T diagram. I know Peter skipped 128 times, and we're solving for this missing part over here. Now remember, when we're solving for a missing part, we're solving using subtraction, right? We know our whole amount. The whole amount is the amount of times that Diane skipped. We know Peter's part, which was 128, but we're trying to find the difference between Diane and Peter. So I chose to solve this problem 2 different ways. So let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on one of them. Okay, so first I chose to use the algorithm to solve this problem. Now, remember, our algorithm is a fancy way of saying the vertical form. So remember, the bigger number always goes on the top. So I started with 165 and I'm taking away 128. I always start in my ones column. So I saw 5 take away 8. And we know that we can't take away 8 from 5 because there's not enough. So I went to my tens place, I borrowed 1, and this became a 5. I took away 1 from 6, right? If I have 6 and I take 1 away, now I have 5 tens left. I brought that 10 over to my ones place. So I added 10 to my 5 ones that were already there. So this number became 15. Now I have enough to take away 8. So I did 15 take away 8. That leaves me with 7. Okay, now I'm done with my ones place. Now I'm going to go over to my tens place. And now I have 5 tens left. I'm going to take away 2. 5 take away 2, that's easy. I can do that in my head. That gives me 3. And then I look at my hundreds place. 1 minus 1 is 0. I can just leave that blank. So I know that Diane skipped rope 37 more times than Peter did. Now, that's only one strategy we can use. We know so many different strategies we've learned in class. So one of the other strategies I chose to use was compensation. Now, compensation is a little tricky sometimes, but if you think about it, you're really just trying to figure out the number that's closest to the next 10 to help you solve this problem. So if I look at this problem, let me zoom in a little. Right, we knew that Diane skipped rope 165 times, Peter skipped rope 128 times. Now, if I think to myself, I'm trying to figure out which number is closest to the next 10, right? If I look in the ones place, which one would be closer to the next 10? 8 or 5? If I'm thinking in my head, okay, which number is closer to the next 10? I know, oh, 8 is the bigger number. That one's closer to the next 10. So I know that 8 needs 2 more to get to the next 10. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides because remember, in compensation, you add the same number to both parts. So I'm going to add 2 to my 128. That gives me 130. And then I'm going to add 2, because I'm adding the same amount, to my number 165. That gives me 167. Now, if I look at my problem, let me move this down a little bit. Now this is a lot easier for me to solve, right? I don't need to borrow anything because I have enough in my ones place to subtract. So when I added my 2 to each number, I got these two new numbers. So now I have 167 minus 130. I'm looking in my ones place first, right? 7 minus 0 gives me 7. That's easy, you don't have to borrow. 6 minus 3, that gives me 3. We still know 1 minus 1 is nothing. So both times I got the answer of 37. So either way I choose to solve this problem, whether I'm choosing to use the algorithm or if I'm choosing to use compensation, I know that either way Diane skipped rope 37 more times than Peter. So remember, at the end of the problem, it's asking you to solve it by using your sentence form. So right at the bottom, let me flip this around. Whoop. There we go. Okay, so right at the bottom of your application problem paper, if this will zoom in for me. Sorry, it's a little blurry. There we go. So at the bottom, I have this line right here to answer my question. What? Are we allowed to get lunch? I think so. You just interrupted my video.
You teaching?
Yes, I am. I'm teaching to myself right now, but I'm going to send it to them. Dad and Mr. B. Interrupting as usual. Nobody. I'm just recording myself right now.
Well, that's kind of fun.
So at the bottom of my paper, I have my line where it says solve it. So that's where I'm going to write my answer to my problem. So I'm going to write my sentence. So if I go back to this one, right, if I look down here, I wrote my whole sentence out. I restated what the problem was asking. The problem asked me, how many more times did Diane skip rope than Peter? I'm writing it out. Diane skipped rope 37, right? Because we found the answer was 37. 37 more times than Peter. Because she didn't skip rope 37 times. She skipped rope 37 more times than Peter. Okay. I want you to give yourself a big old check or a star at the top of your paper if you got that correct. If you did not get it correct, that's okay. We're just gonna fix it so that we have the correct numbers on our problem. If you're not sure what you did wrong, I want you to think about when we talk in class how we can use the problem to help you figure out what you're trying to solve for, right? We already know how much each of them jumps. So we're not trying to figure out how much they jumped all together, right? Because then that would be asking us to add. Why isn't this flipping? There it goes. Right? It would be asking us to add it if we were trying to figure out all together. But this one's helping us or asking us to solve for a missing part. So we can use this information in the problem to help us solve it when you're drawing it and answering it in a sentence form. If you got it, kiss yourself on the brain. Excellent job. If you didn't, I want you to go back and I want you to try to fix it so that yours matches mine. Good job.